Okay, panelists. The topic is scaling AI agents. My first question is really around the scaling when you compare open source ecosystems and closed source equals. Uh, how do you think open source ecosystems can scale relative to their closed source counterparts, and what are the key differences?
Yeah, I don't mind taking a first crack at that. I might defer this one to you, Ben, a little bit because you'll have a different perspective. But Joe, I'll say, if we're talking about open source models, first of all, you could just see like DeepSeek. Like, I don't think I need to say a lot more than that, just from the community reaction perspective. Um, I think the more that we share architectures, recipes, like data sets, we're going to see a distillation of capabilities into smaller models. And there are reasons why I think we should want this. A lot of it has to do with like verifiable trusted execution, like being able to do that. I don't want to go straight to AGI and super alignment, but I think we'll get there in this conversation. And these are all absolutely necessary. It's not going to happen behind closed doors in black boxes. It's going to happen because of the efforts of the open source community.
I'm going to come at it from a very different angle and somewhat heretical, because there is this unsaid assumption, I think, that in a closed sourced environment, you can essentially scale faster and better than you can in a decentralized one. I'm just going to give you the basic counterexample for AI agents. Some of you may not know, I've been working in this sector, not necessarily decentralization, but I love it. AI in gaming, for instance, since the early 2000s. My first game was Ultima Online, the first successful commercial MMORPG. It's the one that tried to create a world with 100,000 AI agents alongside 100,000 humans. And the problem was, even with all of Electronic Arts' money, even with all the server capacity that we could put, there's only so many things you can execute per second and keep the state resolved for the entire world and share it with all the other players. And what that means practically is it's really easy to have players say things like, I moved north and I hit a wall. No problem. That's easy. The server takes nothing for that. An NPC, a non-player character, trying to walk around a wall, that costs tens of thousands of CPU cycles, and you run out of them real quick when you've got thousands of NPCs to scale. It's the same problem as AI agents today. And the promise of decentralization should be that we can scale out not just the compute and inference, but the coordination and communication for those AI agents in a way that we are not able to do in a corporate monolithic way. And I find that problem a wonderful one to solve.
Totally agree. I think to come at it from maybe the model side, if you think about what's going to be corporate value, what's differentiable and defensible within machine learning, the models themselves aren't really defensible. You can distill the models very easily. As long as a model is exposed in some way, you can get the information from that model and you can train another model from it. So in reality, having a closed source model doesn't really do anything over the long term. So then companies have to look for the thing that is defensible. What's going to differentiate them? Where's the actual competition? And our view is the competition's at the product level. It's like when the user is interacting with this system, do you provide something which is a better experience to them than another company? And so we're going to rally around the interfaces, the interconnections, things like that, the things that a company can do which isn't easily distillable. And so in reality, I think that just means long term, it will inherently be open source. Even if companies compete and have closed source models, they're actually kind of technically open source because you can just distill them into another model. And so it's inevitable whichever way we go. Therefore, the world should really just lean into open source. It's what Meta saw. It's why Mark went down the route of open sourcing Llama, right? Because if you open source it as that company, you get the benefit of the world working on top of your infrastructure before it works on top of everybody else's. So they saw what was happening down the line. They saw the fact that these models would become open anyway, and they just leaned into it. So the dominant strategy becomes for a centralized company actually to open source. We saw it with DeepSeek as well, has been mentioned here. So yeah, I think it's the most logical dominant strategy. You don't need to kind of look at any more deeply into it than that. It's just going to be the way things go.
Thank you. Open systems scale. I love it. Ben, you mentioned a little bit about the user experience and the interfaces. I think a lot of new emerging technologies, they reach escape velocity based on some kind of key value to the end user. What do you guys think is going to be that watershed moment for agents that triggers human behavior in a way that allows it to scale in a human user driven way?
I think to jump in from my side, I think that's the secret, right? That's what everyone's looking for. That's the big kind of secret here. We're in the same position in the decentralized AI world as like OpenAI were just before ChatGPT, where you have this incredible technology that everyone is absolutely certain will be hugely impactful, but you're not really sure exactly how it will land first. Like what's the beachhead? What's the like tip of the spear for why the world wakes up and says, oh, this is really cool. You don't have to be a machine learning researcher or something to understand that this is going to be impactful. It just looks it is. And that was ChatGPT for the centralized AI world, but I don't think anyone really knows what it is for decentralized AI. I mean, that's my opinion. We're building infrastructure, right? I don't have to think too deeply about it. But realistically, I do, because we need that to happen. So we've been building our infrastructure waiting for that moment and waiting for the world to see, oh, that's why decentralized AI makes sense. And then they look for the infrastructure to build it, and then we're there with the kind of infrastructure ready. But obviously, I think these guys are maybe a bit closer to that, so maybe have more strong opinions on what it is than I do.
I have strong opinions. I have a bias too. Because in an earlier panel and demo, we showed off the Hollywood agent that makes generative AI videos permissionlessly and in a decentralized fashion, right? And so looking back in history of the products I've worked on, one of the big key drivers, especially from games, is I don't like to be told no. I don't like it when a system comes back to me and says, sorry, I can't do that. Sorry, that's outside of our content restriction guidelines. And oh my gosh, that happens even for the most innocent of queries that I send to unnameable, centralized, monolithic OpenAI companies. Whoops. But we have a chance, I think, now to, like, for instance, in the new systems that are coming out that are trying to approach decentralization in a more social way, to hook, like, fully permissionless systems into them that use AI. And then what you do is you have the separation of the compute, the inference, the coordination from the company's secret sauce. The part that's really light, that is just like small, containable, intellectual property, you sector that off, but it feeds all the stuff that you can do in economic loop for rewards in paying people to like generate videos, for instance. And look, I'm happy to pay like $1 for a 30-second video. I mean, like, holy cow, that's a lot cheaper than it traditionally has been to make any kind of content, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna go in a slightly different direction. For me, like one of the most exciting things that hasn't really happened in my view yet with AI agents is to have agents with agency. And I think that what we're gonna see is like another like inflection point or catalyst point. Once we have autonomous agents that really are able to, take greater accountability and, carry on a greater realm of tasks, I do think that the intersection between AI agents and DeFi is like an amazing place to start that exploration. As soon as we make agents autonomous economic actors, I think we're going to see, maybe not, like, I'm not going to, rub the crystal ball of products, but maybe my argument is that, with all of these interfaces and like coordination layers, we're going to see emergent products or emergent functionality, like emergent utility. And that's what I'm excited for.
I totally agree with that emergent point. I think that's the best bet to make here, because in reality, we could all try and guess which direction is going to make the most sense. But if you build the systems, the interactions like you described, you give the environment to these agents, and then you let what is going to happen, let it emerge organically. In reality, that's what's most likely to be effective. If you look back at the internet, right? Like, I think when we first invented the internet, people didn't sit down and say, this is exactly how this is going to go. It went in a totally weird and wonderful direction, and it's still continuing to do that. But it did that from a set of base protocols that we like painstakingly created through the internet protocol wars, literally like a decade of time of the world figuring out how these communication standards should work. And then from that, we got the world of GeoCities and then social media and like all the weirdness of the internet. She's saying the thing's going to happen again. Yeah, and we're going to get the weird GeoCities equivalent for AI agents. Once we define how they can interact and how they can have identities, etc., they'll go and do weird stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. true story. People are excited about this enough that they took one of my blog articles, which is called Autonomous Virtual Beings, and turned it into a meme coin. Like, literally turned it into a community meme coin. Like, people want agents to have some sense of autonomy for, like, not just to, like, have fun, not just for chaos, but because think about the economic value. And I don't just mean like money. I mean like the actual productive output of humans on this planet. Now think about that being one-to-one with AI agents, and think about the sheer complexity, the sheer emergent output of that kind of system. Where does AGI come from one day? Maybe it's not one system. Maybe it's not one monolithic thing. Maybe it is an emergent phenomenon on top of a lot of tinier, smaller agents all talking to each other. It's a possibility, right? But like what I find value in now is trying to move the actual requirements for autonomous agents away from text. Like we're really stuck on text in LLMs right now. Diffusion models are far more powerful for different modes like image and video, and even, again, text or sound. We can try new things. You can put these agents in games. You can let them walk around in Second Life and learn about the world around them. And no one's really pulling that off yet. I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to help enable that to happen.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit more about interoperability. It's obviously valuable for all the agents to talk to one another. What do you think some of the greatest challenges are in terms of getting to that point, and how do we solve them?
Yeah, I mean, I can. I'll go straight into DeFi with my answer, and I think there's interoperability like between agents, and we're starting to see like protocol standards like Model Context Protocol emerge for agent-to-agent communication. I think if we're going to talk about on-chain action taking, there's a whole set of open questions, I think, about what interfaces do we really want to give AI agents? Is it going to be like all the way down to low-level smart contract functions? Maybe. Are we going to build kind of an abstraction layer that makes more sense to give a more high-level action space to agents? I'm kind of excited to see to see that play out, and it's more like, how are we going to see the Web3 builders kind of create more agent-oriented products, and vice versa? How are we going to see agent developers really start to be able to interface on-chain in more like safe, secure, scalable, these kind of ways?
Okay, so this is going to be indelicate because I love my trust infrastructure bros. Kind of one of the challenges I see right now is when you have zero knowledge proofs as your hammer, everything for agents looks like a nail with ZKP, and including spending a ton of money on building giant circuits to prove LLM model output instead of doing something simpler and having simpler consensus mechanisms that could actually solve for non-deterministic things that are fuzzy, things that are like more like human, things that don't have like one answer, one truth. Like, we're good as humans at one thing, in particular, besides running for really long distances. And we're a great classifier. We're really good at taking things and deciding, is that acceptable or not? And right now for AI agents, most of them are stuck with the ability of just relying on an LLM for that, or a zero knowledge proof attached to some mathematical function. And that means when you're trying to make interoperability between all these platforms, it's not just slow, and you're not just paying a fortune to wait for a roll-up. You're also kind of bound by the actual like type of problem that you can have the agent talk about. And I want that to be more open. I want agents to treat Twitter like Twitter instead of having to have some underlying protocol proving that the tweets happen. They just look at Twitter. That's all I care about. X, whatever we're calling it.
So I think, to me, interoperability is it's like the development of standards problem, right? Like, you're trying to create some kind of standards. And the centralized world tries to do this in like working groups and things, which like lots of people get in a room and they try and decide how things are going to look in the future. I think in reality that is just like incredibly flawed. I really like, in a nerdy way, the concept of desire paths. So a desire path is basically like if you have a park and you have people walking through this park, a desire path is a path that people take when they just have a goal and they're just going through the park. And so you'll have walked them. It's basically when there's a sidewalk somewhere and there's another one somewhere else, and then there's like a weird dirt trail that goes through like a bit of grass. And it's because it's the most efficient way for you to get to the next place. but the city or whoever is creating those paths hasn't actually created a path there. And so I think about desire paths in the same way I think about like standards creation. Basically, you want to let the desire paths be created, and then you make paths there. And so you create, you go in and you tarmac that area that people were walking through because that's your path. If you don't do that, people will just still continue making a desire path. There's loads of great examples on the internet where in like park design, somebody will try and like wall it off and they'll say, no, we don't want people walking through there. So we'll put fences in and things like that. People just like climb over the fences or they walk around the fence. Now people will go to great lengths to continue going through that path. And I think the same thing happens with interoperability and with the way agents will develop. Basically, if we try and decide the rails that they will use to communicate and interoperate, we'll probably get it wrong. And they will actually do it a different way. And so people will use browser emulation, even though we've given them a set of APIs, because actually browser emulation is better. And so what we need to do is just let the browser emulation weirdness happen and then go in afterwards and build the APIs that make it more convenient to do the thing that agent was doing anyway. So to be honest, I mean, maybe it's just a lazy approach. It's basically saying, okay, we don't have to do anything yet. We'll do it after the world's kind of solved it in a really bad way, and they'll just come in and make it more efficient. And the beauty of that is you can let the market do that because there'll be ARB opportunities for someone to build a company. And so actually it means we don't need to make any standards. We just let it happen, and then afterwards we optimize it with the market like we would have done anyway.
I love that answer. That sometimes doing nothing is the hardest thing to do. So this next question around scaling, I think the client-server architecture was fundamental in scaling the internet. I think AI has sort of changed the application architecture in a pretty big way. What percentage of essentially runtime do you think will happen locally versus in the cloud, and why?
Very strongly opinionated about this. A lot will happen locally. It's the most efficient place for execution of compute operations to happen on the data that will matter in the future, which is local data. It's going to originate from you on a device. You're covered in sensors anyway. You're going to be covered in sensors even more. The real personalization of AI will happen at the user level. Like Ilya Sutskever said this in Europe with the death of pre-training, right? Like the idea of training a model on all of the internet and like stuffing all that information into the model. We've got pretty good at doing that now. It's not that valuable to continue doing that. Actually, what's next is getting the information that's originating everywhere, all over the world in weird places into models, into parameter space. That happens locally. So to me, we'll still have these big models in data centers because it's the most efficient place to distill all of the structured data we've already gathered into a model because we've already paid the communication cost to get it there. But it doesn't make sense to pay the communication cost to get like the microphone data from your phone to a centralized server and then train it into a model. Actually, it makes more sense to train it into a model locally, and then that model talks to a model out there in the world. And it's talking through parameter space. It's already compressed the data into a way smaller, way more efficient representation. So in reality, we're just going to execute as close to the data as we possibly can. And again, the market will do that because it's the most efficient way to do it.
I'm going to follow up directly on this because the web is broken. Like if you guys have gone and tried to search for anything on the web lately, you're starting to see the breakdown, right? It's not just ads everywhere. It's none of that. It's that the contract between search engine and provider of information is now fundamentally broken because of AI. So just directly following on what Ben said, local first doesn't just mean us users. It can mean someone like Reuters. It can mean someone like AP. It can mean something like Yahoo, where every day as they add new content, they are parameterizing it. They are turning it into vector embeddings. They are storing their own local models, and those models are communicating not with the search engines we know today, but a future fully decentralized search engine that literally murders the current search engine ecosystem. Because why does it need to exist when there can be a provably fair AI-driven decentralized search engine that's better and always on and doesn't like rely on scraping anymore? Like that is now becoming possible on the horizon for the first time.
Yeah, and I want to echo like some of Tim, your points and Ben too. Like I think what we're gonna see is that as we go from, not everybody, but like a lot of people and products using centralized like this same models over and over again, it's like we're seeing a kind of mode collapse of content, of maybe even ideas. And I think it's quite dangerous. One of the huge benefits of having a much more distributed or federated kind of existence of smaller, more personalized, more diverse models, I think that we're actually going to see lots of benefits, like, not just in terms of these problems that I mentioned, but if you think of AI as more of a social organism, that diversity is going to lead to like much, much more powerful emergent behaviors.
Yeah, we joke about digital life forms, but really think about it. You give a model a wallet and you tell it that its goal is to continually grab the kind of information that allows it to continue monetizing. It will optimize its niche, right? And then it can interact with all these other networks, these other like services that these guys are providing. And suddenly you have strange little alien digital life forms. It's inevitable.
I think we have to do it as well, because the sort of like the dead internet theory, the idea that models are generating the vast majority of content now and then like training on it, etc. That's true. Like models are generating enormous amounts of content to the point where we can't filter through it as humans anymore. We need models to do it on our behalf. And so what we'll do is create objective functions for models to do that filtering process. And then, like you say, what we're doing then is basically creating these life forms to sit around us and be the curators of digital knowledge for us. And if we don't do that, we'll be completely overwhelmed. And so I think that society is going to go down a weird route where people embrace that and some people don't. The people who don't will most likely just have to withdraw from digital society because it'll be absolutely overwhelming to exist in it. But if you do embrace it, you're going to have to create these objective function agents around yourself to do the filtering. Otherwise, you're just going to get bombarded with information that you don't even understand. And so we will need them to do the translation for us of the information. And I think one of the things that I find really interesting is we can talk about this within models themselves, where we say that we can teach agents to communicate within their own language. You can do that. You could design a mathematical model to do that. But actually that is emerging itself. It's happening in front of our eyes, where the information that these models creates is like slop to us. We don't really understand it. But other models do. And so actually they're creating their own kind of language around us. It's too like much for us. We can't handle it. So we need it. We need to create those objective functions, those agents around us, or we go live in the woods and stop using the internet.
So I guess we're speed running the movie Her. So yeah, let's go. Let's make AI agents that actually improve our lives.
Amazing. Okay, well, we are at time. Thank you, panelists. We have Thierk, Scripted, and Jensen all here representing their projects. Thanks for all the incredible insights.
Thank you.